Welcome to your new obsession, where every episode is packed with tools and science to help you become the best version of yourself. Whether you're a biohacking newbie or a seasoned pro, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome back to the Biohacking Trainer Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Czaplewski, a longevity enthusiast, personal trainer, and fellow biohacker. Today we're diving into a topic that I think affects far more people than most realize: mental health and burnout. Now, when people hear the term biohacking, they often think cold plunges, supplements, wearables, red light therapy, and all the latest gadgets. But one of the most important areas biohacking can impact is actually your mental well-being. Now, burnout isn't simply being tired after a long week. The World Health Organization essentially defines burnout as a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that hasn't been successfully managed, characterized by exhaustion, cynicism, and reduced effectiveness. Today we'll talk about what burnout actually is, why your nervous system plays such a huge role, and most importantly, the practical biohacks you can implement immediately to improve your resilience, recovery, and mental performance. Now let's dive right into it. Now, I think one of the biggest misconceptions about burnout is that people believe it's a motivation problem. They think I just need to push a lot harder, I need to be much more disciplined, or I need to just kind of grind through this tougher period. But burnout is often a physiological problem as much as it is a psychological one. When we're exposed to prolonged stress, our nervous system can become dysregulated. Now, research suggests burnout is associated with sustained activation of the stress response system, changes in cortisol regulation, inflammation, and altered autonomic nervous system functions. So basically, in the most simple terms, your body starts acting as if it's under constant threat. The issue isn't necessarily that you're weak. The issue is that your recovery systems can no longer keep up with your stress load. And here's something I tell my clients truly all the time. Burnout isn't caused by just one bad day. It's actually caused by hundreds of days where recovery never fully catches up, whether it's not enough sleep, not enough food, not enough hydration, you name it. Now, as a trainer and biohacker, one of my favorite metrics to monitor is HRV, so heart rate variability. HRV measures the variation in time between heartbeats. Generally speaking, a higher HRV tends to reflect greater adaptability and recovery, while a lower HRV can indicate more, say, stress, fatigue, or insufficient recovery. A lot of studies have shown that individuals that are experiencing clinical burnout often display a lower HRV compared to healthy controls. Now, here's where many people make a mistake. They tend to compare their HRV to someone else's, which essentially that's just useless. Your HRV is essentially your fingerprint. What matters is your trends. So if your HRV is typically at 75 and suddenly you're sitting at 45 for several days while your sleep, mood, and energy are declining, that's a very valuable information right there and valuable insight. Now, your wearable isn't diagnosing burnout, but it can help identify when your body is struggling to recover and starting to go into that state of burnout. And this is why I essentially love wearables like the Whoop, Oura rings, Garmin, or even Apple watches, because not necessarily because they tell us exactly what's wrong, but because they provide objective feedback when our subjective feelings may be lagging behind. So one big biohacking technique here to help mitigate this issue of burnout is prioritizing sleep, essentially like your life depends on it, because honestly it kind of does. So sleep is the foundation of mental health. Most people search for the perfect supplement while sleeping 6 hours a night. That's like trying to essentially build a house on a cracked foundation. It's just never going to work. So if you're experiencing burnout symptoms, your first intervention should essentially be consistent sleep schedules. So If you need to be up by 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock, you're going to sleep at an adequate amount of time to get your 8 hours of sleep. You're keeping your room dark at night. You're keeping your room cool. A lot of the literature will show about 68 degrees is optimal. You're getting some early morning sunlight exposure, and you're limiting your screen usage before bed. Ideally, I would recommend reading a book that last hour before you want to fall asleep as you're preparing yourself to go to bed. These basic habits essentially outperform expensive biohacking tools or techniques, and it's something you can start today. Another great biohack is just, like I said, simple morning light exposure. So one of the simplest interventions available is stepping outside shortly after waking. So morning sunlight is going to help regulate your circadian rhythm. It's going to help improve sleep quality later that night, and it's going to help anchor cortisol production. Think of it as essentially setting your internal clock, and there's no supplement that's required. No subscription either to any sort of technology, just sunlight, pure sunlight that we see every single day. Now, another biohack is exercise, but making sure it's not too much. So this one does surprise people. Exercise is one of the best tools for mental health, but too much exercise can actually contribute to burnout. So many high performers respond to stress by doing more, whether it's more workouts, higher intensity, more volume, trying to push more weight. But sometimes what your nervous system truly needs isn't another hard workout, it needs recovery. So if your HRV is trending downwards and your sleep is worsening and you're starting to feel mentally exhausted and drained, consider replacing a high intensity workout with, say, a brisk walk, more zone 2 cardio training, more mobility work, maybe doing a yoga class of some sort, or even going out and doing some outdoor movement or outdoor activity. Just always remember, exercise should build resilience, not drain it. So in this case, sometimes less is more. Now, another great biohacking tool to mitigate this issue as well is breathwork for essentially nervous system regulation. So when people hear breathwork, they are often thinking that it's some kind of wellness trend, but breathing directly influences the autonomic nervous system. So a few minutes of, say, slow nasal breathing can help shift you from more of a sympathetic fight or flight state toward more of a parasympathetic rest and digest state. One of my favorite protocols is inhaling for 4 seconds, exhaling for 6, and you repeat that for 5 minutes. Another great technique is a simple box breathing metric of a 5-second inhalation, hold for 5 seconds, a 5-second exhalation, hold for 5 seconds, and repeat for 5 minutes. It's simple, it's free, and surprisingly, very powerful. Now, another great tool is reducing cognitive overload to help mitigate with these mental stressors. So this is one that doesn't get talked about enough. Many people aren't physically burned out, they're cognitively burned out. Whether it's making decisions, they're getting constant notifications, constant emails, social media, they're getting text messages, calls, and news alerts. Your brain never gets silenced, and you're never getting a moment of silence. One thing I've personally found valuable is creating intentional periods of cognitive recovery. So at some periods of my day, typically later in the evening, no phone usage, don't listen to any podcasts, no music, just a walk, just thinking, just existing, and taking in life. Sometimes the most advanced biohack is removing stimulation from your life for a short period of time. Now, I always want to address this, and I really want to address something I see in the biohacking community. People become obsessed with optimization. So they're tracking sleep score, they're tracking HRV, they're tracking their recovery score, they're tracking their readiness score, and stress scores, and etc. And suddenly, they're more stressed because of all the data. So I've seen people wake up feeling amazing and check their wearable and see a lower recovery score, and they're convincing themselves they're having a bad day. Now, the data should inform you, and it should not control you. So that could just be a one-off. Now, always remember, the technology is simply a tool. It's not a replacement for self-awareness. Some of the most experienced biohackers will tell you that the goal isn't collecting more data. It's making better decisions essentially with the data that you already have. So seeing where your HRV score is typically at and keeping an eye on the trend. If your HRV is continuing to go down for several days and you are starting to feel yourself become more lethargic, feeling tired, feeling much more drained throughout the day, then that's a potential sign of burnout. Maybe it's a sign of a sickness or illness coming on, you name it. But make sure you don't let the data control you. You just utilize it to make the best decisions for yourself. Now, if there's one thing I want each and every one of you to take away from today's episode, it's this. Mental health optimization doesn't start with fancy gadgets. It starts with recovery. Burnout is often a signal that your recovery capacity is being overwhelmed by your stress load. So focus on better sleep, more morning sunlight, smart exercise habits, breathwork, and managing cognitive overload. Master those fundamentals first, and then use some different biohacking tools to enhance what you're already doing. Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't to become a better biohacker. The goal is to become a healthier, happier, more resilient human being. Now, thank you all again for listening to the Biohacking Trainer podcast. If you found value in today's episode, share it with a friend who might be feeling overwhelmed, stressed, or burned out. And until next time, stay healthy, stay curious, and we'll see you next time.